The Disney Plus Hulu HBO Max bundle. The ultimate bundle at an unbelievable price. Starting at $19.99 a month. On Disney Plus, go behind the scenes with Taylor Swift in the end of an era.
Every single one of us all clicked together.
Battle it out with The Roses on Hulu.
Things are getting a little out of hand.
Well, you think?
And don't miss The Conjuring, Last Rites on HBO Max.
I don't know how to protect you this time.
All these and more streaming this month. Plans starting at $19.99 a month. Terms apply. Visit Disney Plus Hulu HBO Max bundle.com for details.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. Enjoy comfortable rooms and friendly service when you stay with Hilton instead. Save up to 25% this season when you book with Hilton. Hilton for the stay. Terms apply.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means, and that's Stefan Krajisnik, and this is your Leave No Doubt pod, except you're getting it on a Tuesday. And the reason why is we spent Monday just reacting to the news of where Ohio State is in the college football playoff bracket. They are the number 2 seed. They will play in the Cotton Bowl on December 31st, and they will play the winner of Texas A&M and Miami as the 7 and 8 seeds. This is the second time since Ryan Day's taken over as head coach as they played on New Year's Eve. They played on New Year's Eve in the 2022 Peach Bowl as well. They lost that game with, ironically, a kick that ended up being no good just as the ball was dropping into the new year, which is the irony of that and some of the things we might talk about today on this podcast. But we are going to be diving deep into Ohio State's 13-10 loss to Indiana over the weekend in the Big Ten championship game. It's the first time in 30 years that Indiana has beaten Ohio State. It's the first time in over 40 years that Indiana has won the Big Ten. And the first time in over 50 years that they've won the Big Ten outright. Ohio State still without a Big Ten championship since 2020. And that's only the second time since the introduction of the Big Ten championship game that Ohio State has lost that game. And as we do every single week, this podcast is about leaving no doubt. Day has already answered the question for us of whether Ohio State left no doubt on Saturday. And I loved it when he said it. I was like, great plug for the pod. They didn't leave any doubt. They left a lot of doubt on Saturday, especially on the offensive side of the ball, which is where we're going to start, Stefan. You and I have both rewatched the game, I'm sure, numerous times. And the first question up the bat is, why did Indiana have sustained success against Ohio State's offense?
I thought the pressure that they created was pretty consistent throughout the game without having to bring more than 4 guys, right? And I think it's something that we talked a lot about going into the game. And I think in some of the biggest moments, you saw Ohio State's offensive line not necessarily prepared for what Indiana was going to bring. I think pull up my notes here, there was a third down on one of the situations where Ohio State gets into the red zone. I can't find exactly where it was now, but Ohio State gets into the red zone. It's a third down play, and Indiana brings a 4-man rush, but one of the guys coming is Charlie Jones, or Isaiah Jones, I should say. Kind of from the left side, he's almost lined up, kind of defending the guy lined up in the slot there. And he ends up coming in and creating pressure. And Austin Serval and Luke Montgomery, just the protection doesn't really slide over. And it kind of felt like a play that really summed up at least the first half of the game, where Julian Sain just looked a little bit lost at times, was having trouble maybe diagnosing some things pre-snap, and Ohio State's offensive line wasn't doing much of a job to help him out either. So I felt like Indiana was just making life difficult, at least early on, for Ohio State's offense in terms of knowing, who was going to be bringing pressure at what times. I did think in the second half that Ohio State's offense had some more success, right, getting some drives down the field, and we can talk about some of that. But at the end of the day, in some of the biggest moments, Indiana was able to get pressure on Julian Sain. And I think that was the biggest thing, where Indiana was telling themselves, bend, don't break. And at some point, someone's got to make a play. And it felt like almost on every drive, up until the last couple, that it felt like Indiana, was going to have a guy who could get some negative yardage and get a tackle for loss or a sack in a crucial moment and really kind of knock Ohio State back behind the sticks and put them in a spot where they can't do a whole ton. So the consistent pressure and the ability to kind of confuse Julian Sain, I thought was interesting watching it from that perspective, because what's something that we've said all year with Ohio State is that they disguise things really well. And if you're a young quarterback, it is difficult to pick that apart. We said it for Damon Williams. We said it for Arch Manning early in the season. We said it for Bryce Underwood. This was maybe kind of one of those games where you say, yeah, that defense on the other side is also really good and also disguises things really well and has a really good defensive coordinator. And Ohio State is a team that has the young quarterback who has not seen a ton of that, right? This is still Julian Sain's first year as a starter. He still has less experience than, a Fernando Mendoza or a Diego Pavia or, even Luke Altmaier is a guy with a lot of experience, right? That's an element of Julian Sain's game that, kind of comes with time. And this was maybe the first time this season where they faced a very unique defense in terms of the way they disguise things and the way they bring pressure. And it wasn't always great at times, and the offensive line didn't do a lot to help them out.
So just the rundown I sent Stefan is there's like football stuff. That's like everything but quarterback conversation. There's maybe a kind of a bird's eye view conversation about some things, some hardline things, and the way Ohio State may be prepared to play in this game versus the way Indiana prepared to play in this game. And then maybe saving some Julian Sain stuff for the end. And so I'll save some of those thoughts because you kind of hit on it. Julian Sain had never seen anything like this before in 12 games. And we said it in real time. I didn't realize how much he had really never seen anything like this until you start rewatching this game. You look at some other games, and also you just look at some of the numbers of how often he was getting pressured. I thought this was the best we have seen a team in the 13 games Ohio State has played where the coverage and the rush were working together, right? I think Indiana's defensive coaching staff did a great job muddying up the picture for Julian Sain in the back end, while up front giving this offensive line everything to have to deal with. Because, we said it right on the live show last week, Indiana only really sends 4, but you don't really know who are the 4. And Ohio State does a little bit of that too. So this is not like, Indiana reinvented the wheel situation. It's a little bit different facing it on a Tuesday practice where you can't get hit versus facing it on a Saturday night on a neutral site where you can get hit. I don't think Ohio State handled Indiana's defense very well. And what it led to was a confused first-year starting quarterback and an even more confused offensive line who didn't communicate twists, who didn't communicate stunts, who didn't execute basic blocks, right? The play you're talking about, it's the red zone play where he has to scramble out to the right. The blitz, the pickup just was not set up correctly. So instead of Austin Saravelt kicking out and taking away that free blitzer, he helps out on Luke Montgomery's man a little too long and then tries to kick out and get the blitzer. And by then the blitzer's already around. And by then the play is already. So that's like pre-snap, identifying who are the 4 people coming, identifying who should be blocking who, setting up and that's on Julian Sain as much as it is on Carson Hinsman because they work in unison with those things. CJ Stroud once, we asked him about the relationship between him and Luke Whippler when they were the quarterback and center, and it's like he compared it to a president and a vice president almost, where like or like a head coach or an assistant coach, right? Like the center has responsibilities, right? He has things he's in control of. And the quarterback's job, he gets to veto it, right? He gets final say in that. And I don't know if Julian Sain and Carson Hinsman were always on the same page with how they were identifying stuff. And I think Indiana took advantage of it because they threw every type of exotic blitz, every type of twist, stunt you could think of. But the thing is, Fernando Mendoza was dealing with the exact same thing on the other side of the ball, right? How many times did we see Caden Curry dropping coverage? How many times did we see Kenyatta Johnson dropping coverage? I don't know, and maybe I don't want to get too deep into the woods with some of the defense stuff, but they've reached a point with Arvell Reese where I think they're just using the idea of him more than just using him, where they're just showing him and it's like, oh, I'm blitzing, psych, nope, I'm not blitzing. And they just like don't blitz him anymore. But also Caden Curry was eaten on the right side of the offensive line, so it's fine. But both quarterbacks kind of dealt with 2 defenses who back end, front end are just giving you a lot to have to deal with. And one quarterback center pairing being Fernando Mendoza and Pat Coogan, I think just handled it better than Carson Hinsman and Julian Sain handled it. And that's not we'll get in the heartline and the coaching staff in a second, but I think from the player perspective, in terms of what ended up deciding the matchup of which one of these QBs is going to win the Heisman Trophy, who's going to make the right plays. I just think it came down to both of these defenses are very, very good at confusing the picture in the back end, but also you have a short fuse, a short amount of time to figure it out each snap. Fernando and Coogan figured it out. I don't think Carson Hinzman and Julian Sand have figured it out.
Yeah, and I think it kind of plays into, something we talk a lot about when teams are facing Ohio State. I think the Michigan game was the perfect example where you kind of have to take advantage of your opportunities early, right, and build leads. It felt like, Indiana between, settling for a field goal and then missing a field goal and then settling for a field goal again, we kind of were telling ourselves, they're not doing a good job of taking advantage. It actually kind of wound up being Ohio State that didn't take advantage of their opportunities, right? Like the play I was talking about, it was in the second quarter. Indiana missed their field goal, and Ohio State, keeps their 7-3 lead. They hit the deep ball to JJ. They got all the momentum, and on the third down, Jones comes in, and Julian Sand has a scramble, and the play's blown up before he can really even think about anything. And now Ohio State has to settle for a field goal, right? So like that was an opportunity where Ohio State could have firmly grabbed momentum. And now you look back and you say, dang, in the first quarter and early in the second quarter, we were telling ourselves Indiana's not taking advantage of the opportunities. And then you kind of rewatch it knowing what the result is. And you're telling yourself, it's actually kind of Ohio State's offense that wasn't taking advantage of the opportunities. And plays like that were a big reason why, where it was a have it play. And Julian Sand and this offensive line just kind of didn't really know where the pressure was going to come from. And that's why you kind of saw the Julian Sand's jersey was not as clean as it typically has been post game, and that's what you saw.
And it ruined chances to take shots. And that's I'm looking at the big plays right now. Neither of these teams had like a bunch of big plays. Indiana had 2 in the run game, and according to Star Broadcast, a big play is any run that's 10 or more yards and a pass that's 15 or more yards. I'm going to up that a little bit. 30-yard plays in this game on Saturday. Indiana had a 37-yard run from Kalen Black in the first quarter to close out the first quarter. They had a 33-yard, in the third quarter, that's when Fernando hit Charlie Becker for the 15-1-yarder. That's a back-breaking play because they had been trying it a couple of times and they finally hit on it. And then there was a 33-yarder in the fourth quarter that to Charlie Becker as well. So they had 3 plays of 30-plus yards. You want to know how many Ohio State had? They had 2. And one of them is the Hail Mary for 46 yards at the end of the game to Jeremiah Smith. So the only one that was in the flow of the game of we dialed this up because we're about to flip the field was the 52-yarder. That set up the play you're talking about where, look, could Julian Sand have put it out more in front of JJ and he could have ran in for a touchdown? Yes. This is not a video game, though, so I don't know how often that happens. And like, how many quarterbacks in college football would have hit that in stride right now? How many quarterbacks in the NFL are hitting that in stride, right? So it's sure, in theory, he could have, but also I think JJ just made one too many moves afterward.
Yeah.
I think if he just keeps going straight, he probably scores. The initial, like, okay, I'm going to get tackled, so let me stop on a dime so D'Angelo Pons can run past me. Good move. Then he starts running sideways and he just started doing a little too much. And Marvin Harrison Jr. used to talk about this. Marvin was awesome at everything. And then going into his third year, he said a couple of times to us that he really wanted to get better at yards after the catch. And I think that's like, if I'm looking for things where JJ as a receiver outside of the blocking, which is a roller coaster of an experience with JJ, but I don't care, man. I think I point out the blocking more than literally anybody else when it comes to JJ. Like, to you specifically, I'll be in the press box like, he didn't block again? He didn't do it again. I was like, who cares, Steven? He has 95 yards on 3 catches and a touchdown. Nobody cares. But yards after the catch, I think, because given the receiver versus talent we've seen behind him and Carnell Tate, they're going to have to find some creative ways to get him the ball in 2026. And a lot of it might just be short stuff. And then like, hey, JJ, go make a play. And obviously he's not been 100% healthy, so that's maybe playing a role into it. But if he just stays straight, it's probably a touchdown, and it's a different game. But the reason I'm bringing that up is we were wondering where Carnell Tate was in this game. Brian Day said it. There were some things that they dialed up for Carnell Tate, and the pass pro didn't hold up, right? They had one play action pass where it's a play action and then you roll out and then you twist and then you essentially like reset your entire body to get set to make the throw. We've seen that a lot over the last 2 years. And I think Carnell or JJ is open down the field, but Julian Sand is getting sacked. So it literally doesn't matter. There's another one where they're looking to it's literally the very next play after the play I just talked about. is where Julian Sand is fighting off 3 dudes and spinning all over the place and then gets out and has to throw it away, which first and foremost, refs. Come on, man.
Yeah,
That's not a sack.
That was tough because it wasn't forward progress, but also there was probably should have been a face mask against the Ohio State offensive lineman.
Yeah.
It was just such a weird play. Like, you got it wrong on both fronts.
But at least, listen, I thought the refs did a good job of letting them play.
Yeah, especially in terms of defensive backs versus receivers.
Yes. So, but to not let them play there, but also Kenyatta Jackson is getting tackled by 2 offensive linemen, and that's not a holding call. Like, oh no, man, Kenyatta Jackson has a beef to.
Kenyatta's been fighting for some holding calls for a few weeks now. That game was maybe. There was at least 2 where it's like you can't even argue that.
And they're made worse because then Fernando Mendoza goes and does something with it. Right? Like these are like back-breaking plays. But to get back where the right side of the offensive line did not allow Ohio State the opportunity to dial up things very often. Because in the one time it gave them a chance to do so, it's a 52-yard catch down the field. And that's not saying that Indiana gave Fernando Mendoza every opportunity, but he got like 4 or 5 of those chances. They just didn't connect. And then when he finally connected, I mean, these are like big time plays, right? Their third play of the game, if I'm remembering correctly, they tried to dial up one down deep to Omar Cooper. He just didn't catch it. And then he gets hurt for the rest of the game, which is unfortunate because I thought that's a key piece for Indiana to be missing and whatnot. But it's just, I thought Indiana had opportunities to dial up plays and see if they could at least and execute it. And then it's like, can you win the one-on-one battle? Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate never got opportunities to win one-on-one battles down the field because as soon as Julian Sand is getting set and getting ready to throw the ball, there's a 6'5", 300-pound defensive lineman tearing at him because the right side of the offensive line. And that's not just Tegra Shabola. Phillip Daniels gave up some stuff too. The right side of the offensive line was just horrid.
Yeah. I thought that's what cost them momentum in some key plays. You were talking about that sequence where they call the forward progress on Julian. That starts with they've got some momentum, right? This is to start the second half, right? Bo Jackson gets a big run to get into Indiana territory, and on the first down play, you get a sack. And we can get into play calling maybe. I didn't love that the play they dialed up on the first down, so there's going to be a lot of schematic and play calling that goes into this. But it starts with a sack, so immediately you're behind the sticks after you just had a big play, and it's Tegra's fault, right? He's the one on the sack. That actually ended up being his last drive of the game. So like his third to last or second to last play was giving up that sack. That was kind of when Ohio State was like, all right, enough of this. And then the very next play is the forward progress play, and that's Phillip Daniels giving up that sack there. So that's a key moment. 7-3, you're coming out of the half. We talk about the middle 8. It's so important. They didn't score or really. It was an interesting sequence at the end of the first half. They didn't score going into at the end of the first half. And then you come out and you have a chance to really kind of deliver a blow, make it 14-3 or something, at least make it 10-3. I'm sorry, that would make it 17-3. It was 10-6. It would have made it 17-6. But that's a 2-possession lead. That's and we know what this team is like when they have a 2-possession lead. What this defense can kind of do. We saw it against Michigan. So it's 17-6. If you score there, 13-6, worst case, and you get back-to-back sacks after a big run by Bo Jackson, and it ruins it all. And both of them came from the right side.
It's potentially 17-6 in a game that only had one score in the second half. And even if at worst it's 13-6, okay, then Jaden Fielding's trying to make a game-winning field goal and not a game-tying field goal. Like it's a lot. He missed it, so it is what it is. They just would have been going to overtime. But like I don't know, that's a very different world. If you miss it, you're going to overtime versus if you miss it, that's the end of the football game. And I'll get into that later in this podcast because I think both of us have kind of reached a point here with the Jaden Fielding thing where it's like there's enough of a sample size. I don't know why we're still doing this, but let's start with Tegra. So this is floating around Twitter. I think it's J-Book who put it out there. Yeah, it is J-Book who put it out there. Shout out to J-Book over at 247. So apparently for the year, so through conference championship weekend, Luke Montgomery is the 6th best guard from a PFF standpoint in the Big Ten, 74.2 overall grade. And this is for people who played at least 200 snaps. Tegra Shabola is 41st of 46 Big Ten guards at 54.9. And then the tackles, Austin Seerveld is 4th amongst Big Ten tackles, 82.9. Phillip Daniels is 20th amongst tackles, 67.3. Phillip Daniels, he can be a bit of a roller coaster, but I don't think he has done things that have like fundamentally cost Ohio State. multiple times a year. Now, I know we just brought up one play, but we've also theorized how much of like playing next to Tegra Shabola is impacting Philip Daniels and his ability to do his job. Because here are the grades for Ohio State's game against Indiana. Tegra Shabola, 51.6. Philip Daniels, 54.7. Austin Sarabelt, 59.7. Luke Montgomery, 66.0. And then Carson Hinsman, 64.9. So a lot of guys who are just okay. And then there's like Tegra, who in pass blocking, 17.6 as a pass blocker. And it's
that's not good.
We're 12 months in. It ain't great. We both theorized that if Josh Padilla doesn't get hurt, maybe we see a change during those 2 weeks before the Penn State game. But he did get hurt, so that's that. We haven't seen him since. They did pull Tegra Shabola for Gabe Van Sickle at some point in this game. That was not a rotation, contrary to how Ryan Day wanted to talk about it. Tegra Shabola was playing football, and it wasn't going well, and so they snatched him out of the game and spent the last 29 snaps of the game playing with Gabe Van Sickle. That's not a rotation. There have been rotations. You snatching your starter off the field because it's very obvious who is blowing up every single time to try to dial up something deep down the field is not a rotation. And Gabe Van Sickle, 66.2 with a pass blocking grade of 86.5. What a weird dude, man. I think he was great against Penn State. He was not great against Purdue, and then we just haven't seen him since then. It's been a little weird.
I think he was great against Michigan. Are you talking about Gabe?
Yeah.
Oh, my bad. I thought you were talking about Tegra, who was also not great against Purdue, but was good against Penn State and Michigan.
They have 30 days. Well, not less than 30 days. They have 4 weeks essentially to figure this thing out. Do you expect Tegra Shabola, assuming all three of the options are healthy? And I'm not going to ask you to mark down if you don't think it's Tegra who it's going to be, because I think you can make a case for either of those two guys. Do you expect Tegra Shabola to be the starting right guard on December 31st?
I don't. I just don't think you can. It's enough of a sample size to know that it's inconsistent at best. And I've been very firmly in the boat of Ryan Day and the staff have a very clear approach with Tegra and Lorenzo Styles and Jaden Fielding, where it's guys that they trust enough to ride with them as opposed to the unproven younger options. But you're late enough in the year now where Austin Sarabelt's got enough reps at left tackle. Luke Montgomery's got enough reps at left guard. Same for Philip Daniels at right tackle. Same for Carson Hinsman at center. That it's no longer, hey, we're trotting a new guy out there to be surrounded by a bunch of young, inexperienced guys. The line is experienced now. They've at least done it for 13 games, and some of them going back to last year have had valuable experience. And Carson Hinsman 2 years ago going to valuable experience. I just think you have to. I think you got to make a change. You can't trust them out there, at least not. Their approach against Michigan and their approach against Indiana was very clearly this guy plays every snap. Like you said, that was not a rotation. I would call it a rotation if Gabe Van Sickle played in the third drive of the game. That was a benching. Tegra Shabola got benched for the rest of the Indiana game because they did not like what they were getting from him. And Gabe Van Sickle comes in, and on his 3 drives, they have 30 plays for 198 yards. They're going 6.6 yards per play in the 3 drives that Gabe Van Sickle's in. And quite honestly, go back and watch some of the replays, the way we rewatched the game, the way Joel Klatt was highlighting some things. Gabe Van Sickle was kind of balling, actually. It was not that he was just, keeping guys away from Julian Saint long enough. There were some plays where he was creating some holes for Bo Jackson, the run game, to get going, because I thought also those last 3 drives, Ohio State run game actually kind of got going a little bit. Ryan Day has said, I think on Sunday or maybe it was post-game Saturday, that he felt like the run game, didn't really get going, and the stats would back that up. It's not great rushing numbers, but I actually thought that their running game was a big part of some of those drives they put together at the end of the game. Wasn't a great, rushing performance in terms of red zone, and that contributed to the red zone struggles. But part of why they had those 2 drives that kind of went, were long drives in terms of yardage and plays was the run game. And Gabe Van Sickle, I thought, was a big part of that. So I think Josh Padilla is still part of this conversation. We can't ignore the fact that pre-injury, he was this team's third guard, right? So something tells you that between January and October, he was the third best guard and the guy who was pushing for Tegra Shabola's job. He gets hurt. Gabe Van Sickle shows you that he can be part of this. Unless there's, like you mentioned, unless there's a lingering injury and he's still not 100%, I think Josh Padilla is part of this conversation. But I think one of those 2 guys is going to start when Ohio State gets back on the field. You got to do something, right? And it's part of it, too, is that I think it impacts your quarterback, not just in terms of him getting sacked, but there was the play down the seam to Brandon Inniss. I think the reason they don't hit that play is because Saints thinking there's pressure on him, and there's not pressure on him yet. And Joel Klatt points out, he didn't see Inniss because he had to step up in the pocket. No, he didn't have to yet. but he thought he had to because there was pressure that felt like it was coming from the right side. Like it's impacting the timing, it's impacting what's going through your quarterback's mind. And when you're about to play Texas A&M or Miami, and then potentially Georgia, and then potentially Indiana again, or you look at the Indiana side of the bracket, if it's not Indiana, it's probably Texas Tech or Oregon. There's like 6 teams that Ohio State could face, and they all have really good defensive fronts. And if Julian Sands thinking I have to step up because there might be pressure from the right side, and now he's not hitting Brandon Inniss down the seam, it's not a negative play, but it might as well be.
I said it multiple times to you and Jimmy when we were watching that game of like, Indiana's they got to take advantage of this, man. They can't you have to take advantage because eventually Ohio State's going to turn it on. And Ohio State never turned it on because I felt like every time Ohio State had a chance to land a haymaker, the offensive line got in the way.
Yes. And I think the offensive play calling to get the Buckeyes into the red zone was actually pretty good offensive play calling. The play calling in the red zone I did not love. But the things that they try to call, like that, like you said, there are times where you can clearly tell they're trying to dial it up and Julian Sand gets sacked.
Mm-hmm. Or Julian Sand has been sacked so many times already that now he's seeing ghosts. So instead of when the safety comes down, rip the seam, he doesn't want to rip it because he thinks he feels a rusher and there's nothing there. Tegra Shabola, 18 pass blocking snaps, 3 pressures, giving up one of which was a sack. Phillip Daniels, 35 pass blocking snaps, gave up 2 pressures, 1 was a sack. Luke Montgomery, 35 pass blocking snaps, only gave up 2 pressures, no sacks. Austin Saravell, 35 pass blocking snaps, 2 pressures, 1 of them ends in a sack. James Peoples' only snap of a game ends up in a sack. Like that can't happen. And then Bennett Christian in 2 pass blocking snaps gave up a pressure, and then Will Kazmarek in 8 pass blocking snaps gave up a pressure. Those are all the people who gave up pressure. So there are in total 12 total pressures were given up by offensive linemen, tight ends who are blocking tight ends, and then a running back who played 1 snap. It's not great. You can't. I get it. It's not about ceiling, it's about floor. But when the floor starts to like fall from beneath you, you got to make a change. And we are now 2 offensive line coaches into this who all keep coming to the conclusion that Tegra Shabola should be the starting right guard. I don't see how that can continue to be the conclusion unless Gabe Van Sickle and Josh Padilla are just really not it. Because that's the thing. You want to play your best 5. They think Tegra is one of their best 5. Okay, so what does that say about 6 and 7? If these are your best 5. And that's Tyler Bowen's challenge, man. He's got to figure it out. He's got 4 weeks to figure it out. Quick thing on the defense, because the defense was awesome, man. They gave up 13 points, right? And eventually, Fernando Mendoza and Elijah Surratt hit on a slot fade where it's like a one-on-one situation. But I guess that's also kind of the point here is, did Indiana expose anything about Ohio State's defense on Saturday?
Well, it felt like Indiana was able to maybe take advantage of opportunities that teams earlier this year just couldn't because they didn't have the firepower. Do you remember the play where Rutgers kind of went at Devin Sanchez? And I think the immediate reaction by the broadcast was like great coverage by Devin Sanchez. I think I looked at you in the press box. I was like, I think Rutgers quarterback just didn't make a particularly great throw on that play, right? And Indiana, like on a big 3rd down, they went at Devin Sanchez. I can't remember exactly what part of the game that was, but they went after Devin. They went after Jermaine. Jermaine was getting challenged, whether it was Elijah Surratt or Charlie Becker. They were going at him and had some success. So, if they did poke a hole anywhere, it's that, if you have a team that has a decent passing attack, you can challenge these guys in the secondary, maybe more so than they've been challenged a bit this season. That's definitely something to look at. But, overall, I thought Indiana just kind of had it's tough because we just did this whole conversation about Ohio State's offense where it's like, well, if they just execute in the red zone, the game maybe goes a little bit differently. Because Indiana's saying the same thing. Like Hurt Signetti on the big noon set after the game was saying, both teams left some things out there, right? Like Ryan Day saying that game could have easily been 24-13. I mean, Indiana's probably telling themselves that game could have easily been 24-10 or whatever the numbers would have been, right? So I thought Ohio State's defense was good in the red zone, and Indiana kind of just made a play. And I'm interested to kind of have this conversation because it felt like the defense and the 13 points that they allowed was more about execution and scheme, where it's just like there were some one-on-one battles and Indiana won them. Whereas on offense, I think it's a little bit of both execution and scheme that maybe has you scratching your head a little bit. But yeah, I thought they challenged the secondary, and Indiana had the weapons to make plays. And Texas A&M and Miami both have some decent receivers, right, and quarterbacks who are good if not better than good that could maybe make some plays. So it's there's going to be some teams that continue to challenge them, and there's going to be moments I think where Ohio State secondary wins those battles. That they lost against Indiana, we saw it against Texas. Jermaine running a route for receiver and getting an interception, right? Like for one of those, there was Elijah Surratt beating him on a fade and a back shoulder throw. So it's hard to nitpick this defense. The Caden Curry dropping in coverage stuff has been very interesting to me, because I pointed it out to you after the Rutgers game, and PFF had backed that up, that he had dropped in coverage 8 times. And in Ohio State's first 10 games, he had dropped in coverage like 23 times total. And then it was 4 times against Michigan, another 8 times against Indiana. So that's 20 times in 3 games after 23 times in coverage in the first 10 games. So it's interesting, because I feel like it's been good and he's done a good job. And every time they've done it, it's like, wow, that dude's really athletic. And we probably forget how athletic he is, because he's a defensive end who can get after the quarterback, but also drop in coverage and be pretty good. But I also thought there was a pretty key sequence in this game where he drops in coverage, and Arvell and Sonny are also dropping in coverage. And I'm thinking to myself, 3-man rush when you have Sonny, Arvell, and Caden Curry on your roster, like, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, when Indiana's just trying to get like 5 to 7 yards to put themselves in the third and manageable. And that's exactly what Indiana did. And they did it by, hey, there's a running back being covered by a defensive end, go at him. I didn't love it there, so I'm interested to see what they continue doing with the Caden Curry and coverage experience. But overall, that's about as nitpicky as I'll get about this defense. I thought Fernando Mendoza went on the McAfee show right before we started recording on Monday here. Yeah. And he talked about the Caden Curry hit, and I think Fernando Mendoza, he's kind of dorky. He's kind of like a nerd, or for as much of a nerd as a Heisman contending quarterback can be. But I thought the way he talked about the Caden Curry hit was cool. He was like, yeah, man, he cracked me. Like, it was not a dirty play. Like, Caden Curry's a good player, and football's physical. But then he also talked a bit about Matt Patricia and going against that defense. And he's like, it's almost like a cheat code for that defense to have Matt Patricia as their defensive coordinator. So even the guy who was able to have a little bit of success, he's walking away being like, that was really freaking hard to do, or flipping hard to do, as Fernando Mendoza would say, I guess.
He said flipping?
He said when he did his interview with Jenny Taft, he was like, we're the flipping champs. And it's like, you are so cool and so dorky at the same exact time. Like, you're going to be a number 1 overall pick, or at least, depending, we'll see what happens with positional value. But it's like, you're also so dorky, and it's like, it works. So just keep doing it, I guess. Be you. It's so funny to see the guy who's like going like pound for pound with Kenyatta Jackson and Arvell Reese and Caden Curry be like that. It's funny. Also, the broadcast showed when the trophy ceremony was about to start, like, well after I think most of Ohio State players, I think Carmen, Ohio was done, like, Kenyatta went back and found Fernando Mendoza and was like dapping him up. So it's clear that there's a level of respect that this defense has for Fernando and vice versa, which I thought was cool to see.
Yeah. He's going to be the dorkiest Heisman Trophy winner we've had in a long time. So
Heisman runner-up, Diego Pavia is coming, baby.
What if, what if the Notre Dame's opting out of bowl games and throwing a temper tantrum, and Diego Pavia wins the Heisman Trophy? And this is the exact type of stupidity we need to finally change things in this sport.
Maybe.
Diego Pavia being the accidental agent for change is hilarious. I'm looking at the box score. These teams played the same game. You want to see the differences? So you got a combined 8 red zone trips between these two teams, and you got 2 touchdowns out of it. Indiana had a passing touchdown to Elijah Surratt. Ohio State had a passing touchdown to Carnell Tate. Indiana was 3 of 4 on just getting points in the red zone in general. The other 2 were field goals, while Ohio State was 2 of 4 because it missed the field goal, and it also missed on 4th down. Also, Indiana missed a field goal in this game. Ohio State missed a field goal in this game. The difference was Indiana got a 3rd opportunity to hit a field goal, while Jaden Fielding didn't get a 3rd chance to make a field goal. So he's 1 of 2, while Indiana's 2 of 3 on field goals. Indiana was 6 of 13 on 3rd down. Ohio State, 4 of 11 on 3rd down. So yeah, Indiana converted 2 more 3rd down attempts. They also got 2 more 3rd down attempts. Indiana converted their 1 4th down play, and I thought that was a really good play call. Great play call coming out of a timeout. Ohio State did not convert its only 4th down play call. I thought it was also a good play call. Julian Sand needs to learn how to find the bubble, because it's 2 weeks in a row now where he has not been able to find the bubble. And so he didn't find the bubble. He can't execute the QB sneak. Indiana, 5 penalties for 49 yards. Ohio State, 2 penalties for 20 yards. Indiana, 3 points off turnovers. Ohio State, 7 points off for turnovers. Time of possession, Ohio State had the ball for 43 more seconds than what Indiana. They played the exact same football game, and it came down to one team made an extra field goal, and then the other team made the other field goal. But in terms of Ohio State's defense, here's the target situation. for guys. I think this is Jermaine Matthews, Denzel Burke, Oregon game. And obviously he had some bad plays against Michigan as well. 4 catches on 4 targets for 68 yards and a touchdown. Like, he never made a play. And you expect Jermaine Matthews to make a play at some point. Lorenzo Styles, they went at him deep. They only ended up catching 2 of them, but they were for 61 yards. And he also had a pass interference call where he's like celebrating the incompletion. It's like, they threw a flag, dude. What are you doing? Davison Igbinosun, on the very first play of the game, like, I thought Jalen McClain overall had a good game, but he was like out of position on the first play of the game. And because of that, him and Davison Igbinosun run into each other, so Elijah Surratt's wide open. But Davison Igbinosun, 3 targets, 2 catches for 20 yards, and he had the pick thanks to Lorenzo Styles. And then Devin Sanchez gave up a 10-yard catch on his only target, but it was like on a key third down. I think that's the thing, is that on Ohio State's best defensive backs didn't make the plays when you would expect Ohio State's best defensive backs to make the plays to get off the field on third down. And what does Indiana expose? If you have more than one good receiver, I think you can replicate this. The problem is, I think the only other team with more than one good receiver can't run the football and can't stop the run, and they're on the other side of the bracket. So it becomes I think of the issues that they weren't exposed. We've been talking about these issues for weeks. Magnetized because of this game. This is the one issue that I don't think can actually cost Ohio State a national championship, because I just don't know if anybody else is built like Indiana. And just like with Denzel Burke, the first time he played Oregon, do you think Denzel Burke's going to play that badly if they play Oregon again? No, you don't. And he didn't play that badly again. I don't think Jermaine Matthews plays as poorly as he did on Saturday if these two teams meet in Miami on January 19th.
You know what I actually thought? The question you sent to me in our podcast rundown is, did Indiana expose anything about Ohio State's defense? I almost felt like Indiana's offense exposed something about Ohio State's offense, in the sense of, why did Indiana have a receiver go down and Charlie Becker came in and dominated that game?
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, Ohio State's Brandon has played like 27 snaps in this game. Ohio State's showing you that they're not entirely sure they want 3 wide receivers on the field a ton. We joke, like, you know, how many teams would Mylan Graham or Quincy Porter or someone be the best receiver for? Charlie Becker's probably the 3rd best receiver on Ohio State's roster, and he's number 4 on Indiana's roster. I don't know, man. It's shocking to see the other side be deeper. I'll say deeper and better. You know, Ohio State has the 2 best receivers on the field, so I understand if you say I'd rather have the top 2 than, you know, the best 4 collection, but Indiana was definitely deeper at receiver, which is shocking.
Yeah, I'd rather have the top 2 too, unless one of them's got a thigh bruise and the other one's got a calf injury.
Right.
So, and again, they got about 30 days here to get even healthier, so I don't think this will be a problem when they get into the college football playoff. But still, I hold that point about Ennis, because this is going to get into the coaching part of this, because snap counts are just like, what are we doing here for some of these guys? So let's take a break, and then we'll transition to this away from just like the X's and O's part of it, and more into like a bigger conversation about Ohio State and how their offense is being run here on Buckeye Talk.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just
Speaking into the void.
But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso. Gift magical mornings with Nespresso Virtuo Pop. Compact and stylish, Virtuo Pop is made to meet every morning coffee craving. From espresso to coffee, hot or iced, at the click of a button. And celebrate the season with Nespresso's limited edition coffee flavors. Sweet almond and hibiscus, cinnamon and candied tamarind, and festive double espresso. Magic in the making. Shop the holiday gift collection exclusively at Nespresso.com.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan Krajisnik. This is your Leave No Doubt pod. We're having it up on a Tuesday instead of a Monday. And every week we try to come on here and answer the question, did Ohio State leave no doubt? I think this is the first time. Win or lose, I would have come in with all these same doubts. Because I think no matter what would have happened, Indiana made God bleed on Saturday. And no one had done that to Ohio State all year, where even the Texas game, I know they only won by 7 points, but they have like drastically controlled every game they have played into until Saturday. And so we would have come on here and talk about these things anyway. It's just you could talk about them while also having won the game versus Ohio State lost the football game. Did Ohio State lose this game more than Indiana won it?
Yeah, I saw that on the rundown. I thought this would be a great episode to add, Stephen A. Smith and Dan Orlovsky and have one of those conversations. That was a very first take question by you, putting me in a tough spot. Here's what I'll say. Because it does feel a lot like Ohio State lost this game in the sense of, they had red zone opportunities. But again, if it happens both ways, it's kind of hard, right? Like on one side, you're like, well, Ohio State's defense is so good. Look what they did in the red zone. It's like, okay, well, you could say the same about Indiana's defense. And if you want to say Ohio State's offense wasn't good in the red zone, you could say the same about Indiana's offense. So, but it felt like what happened here is in the biggest moments, in the have-to-have-it moments, Indiana's offense made the plays and Ohio State's offense did not make plays. And that's what it comes from here, because the QB sneak, for example, a 4th and 1, you tell yourself, like, Julian Saint just has to convert that, and Ohio State's in a good spot. Indiana kind of blew up that play. The left side, it was actually funny. I thought Gabe Van Sickle blocked that up pretty nice, and it was pressure from the left side that, kind of got to Julian Saint and forced him, to put his knee on the ground and come up short, right? Like the play where the 3rd and 1 that sets up the Jaden Fielding missed field goal, Harding for Indiana, like, comes all the way from the opposite side of the line of scrimmage and defends Bennett Christian and gets the pass breakup. But then there's the other side of, like, why is a play on 3rd and 1 going to Bennett Christian there? Or why, is Julian saying, unable to kind of find that bubble, like you mentioned earlier, on a sneak when it's a play that's been so successful this year. So it just felt like, whether it's Ohio State lost or Indiana won it, however you want to look at it, it just felt like in the biggest moment when the offense is needed to make a play, Ohio State's offense just did not make the play. And whether it's execution or scheme, they were not successful in those biggest moments. And credit to Indiana's defense, but Ohio State's offense is a wagon. And the fact that they didn't convert in those moments is a little bit head scratching and, maybe scary in the sense of the red zone offense has not been great all year. And it feels like a little bit of a trend. I know the number Ryan Day always puts is, 75% of the red zone drives to be touchdown drives. And that's, maybe a bit high, but they're at 67, if I'm not mistaken. That's not, if they were at 72, I'd be like, okay, it's fine to be a little bit below your goal. They're 8% is a pretty big margin in that sense.
I'm looking at our game scores. You had Indiana scoring 17 points. So essentially turning one of their field goals into a touchdown. Gillis gave them 20 points. I said that Indiana was going to score 14 points. So them scoring 13. My answer is yes. And I want to, because the problem is the reasons why are going to sound like an excuse. And they're not excuses. It's just the reality of the situation. College football is stupid. We have taken something so beautiful and consistently over the years found the worst possible way to execute it. But you know what? That is Ohio State's offense right now. It's college football. It's this beautiful thing that they have found the worst possible way to execute. Indiana's last 3 weeks have been bye week, Purdue, Big Ten championship game. Ohio State's last 3 weeks have been Rutgers, the game, Big Ten championship game. Both teams had signing day last week, but only one of those teams has the type of players that, like, the world is trying to actively flip every single day. And that's not a disrespect to Indiana. It's just they don't recruit the way Ohio State recruits yet. Now, they just won a Big Ten championship, so let's see what happens. Right next signing day, if, I don't know, Joe Little, the number 92 player in the country, is committed to Indiana, and now Oregon and Texas and LSU are trying to come flip him, then now Kirk Cignetti is going to know what that feels like. But at no point this past week was Kirk Cignetti worried about his coordinators leaving for South Florida. At no point this week was Kirk Cignetti worried about the best receiver and the best player in his recruiting class flipping somewhere else. And not just flipping somewhere else, it became a spectacle. Right? Was there a player on Indiana's recruiting class who was doing the McAfee show on Friday afternoon? And these are not shots at Chris Henry. Do what you got to do. Like, Chris Henry, enjoy your recruitment. This is not about Chris Henry doing anything wrong. It's about the way this sport is set up. Ohio State spent this week dealing with, it's Wednesday morning, and its offensive coordinator and wide receivers coach is breaking news taking a job at another place. As a result, its best player and best receiver, who also happens to have signed up to play for you because of said offensive coordinator who's taking another job, is now rethinking about where he wants to go to school, even though he has been committed to Ohio State for 2 years. And he's not the only one, right? The Legend Bay situation, he flipped. Caden Dixon White, he flipped. Ryan Day was dealing with a lot of stuff that I can understand if it wasn't that easy for him to lock in and worry about a game. We're talking about a coach who has spent the last month and a half telling us how important routine is. And it's the reason why they moved all this stuff. He moved the circus away from the Michigan game, and he finally won the Michigan game, just to have the circus knock at his door a week later when he has to play the number 2 team in the country. And that's not why they lost. They didn't lose this game because Brian Hartline left for South Florida or because Chris Henry Jr. had some second thoughts before signing a piece of paper. But did those things create an environment where now they were not 100% locked in? Did it create an opportunity for Ohio State to devise a game plan that was going to lose? I think that's a fair thing to say.
I think it's a very fair thing to say.
You know, one team had distractions last week. The other team didn't have distractions, which is why there is a portion of the fan base online right now who has spent the last 3 days having conversations about, hey, should Ryan Day just like tell Hartline, go worry about South Florida. We got it here the way Nick Saban once did with Lane Kiffin, because it's a distraction. And as Ryan Day said, it's not Brian Hartline's fault. It's other people's fault. It's the way the sport is set up. It's not Lane Kiffin's fault that he has to choose right now between LSU and Ole Miss. It's his fault the way he decided to handle a terrible situation. So Brian Hartline don't handle it the way Lane Kiffin did. But the fact that there is a situation to be handled is not Lane Kiffin's fault, and it's not Brian Hartline's fault. But how you handle a bad situation is your fault. And it felt like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, while Indiana and Kirk Cignetti and that coaching staff, all their energy was on, all our players are signed, let's focus back in on the Buckeyes. That was an Ohio State story. And so because of that, that's how you get in the world where every time we looked up and they were on the 17-yard line, there were 4 tight ends in the game. You brought it up that Brandon Ennis only played 21 snaps, while Bennett Christian, who's your third tight end, played 23 snaps. Is that right? Like, if I would have told you that when you put in your game score prediction, which was 27-17, and you wrote these are Stefan Krajisnik's words. The stars in this matchup are the quarterback with Ohio State's Julian Sand going head-to-head with Indiana's Fernando Mendoza, and the winner might secure the Heisman Trophy. However, I think Saturday's game will be decided by the defensive coordinators. Kudos to you. Indiana's Brian Haynes and Ohio State's Matt are elite at disguising pressures and causing havoc without having to rush more than 4 defenders at the quarterback. While the respective quarterbacks take time figuring out how to beat the opposing defenses, the clock will tick, giving us a low-scoring affair early. Eventually, Ohio State's talented receivers will find explosive plays in the passing attack, and the Buckeyes can create some separation in the second half. That's when Ohio State is at its best, because it can rely on its defense, knowing that a 2-score lead in the latter parts of the game is often safe. Eventually, Ohio State's talented receivers will find explosive plays. And I know that starts with Jeremiah and Carnell, and then there's a gap. But Ennis is a part of that. If I would have told you when we put those scores in, Bennett Christian was going to play 2 more snaps than Brandon Ennis, would you have picked the score of 27-17?
I would have picked Indiana 13-10. It's head scratching, and it's not even just the red zone and situation usage. It's like the sequence where we have the forward progress. I'm gonna find it back here again. Start of the third quarter, right? Looking at this. Yes. Okay. Start of the third quarter. Bo Jackson, big run. I talked about this situation earlier. It's 10-6 coming out of half. Bo Jackson, big run. Then you have the sack on first down, the forward progress sack on second down, and it's third and a gazillion, right? They try the screen with Jeremiah Smith. There's nothing there. The first down play is Bennett Christian motioning out wide. So it's Jeremiah with Claire and Bennett Christian as the other option, and there's you could tell Julian Sainz looking at Jeremiah, and there's nothing there, and he ends up taking the sack. And Joel Klatt's like, that's a great job by Haynes and this defense to kind of disguise their coverage, and their coverage kind of ends up shifting over toward Jeremiah, and there's nothing there for Julian Sainz. Haynes is an awesome defensive coordinator. If I see out wide is Bennett Christian and I see inside in the slot is Jeremiah Smith, guess where my coverage is going to happen to be shading towards? Jeremiah Smith. Joel Klatt is awesome, but I'm watching that play being like, yeah, no duh, Joel. Like, obviously they're going to shift toward Jeremiah Smith and he's going to be triple covered because the other option on the outside is Bennett Christian. and they're at midfield and it's 1st and 10 after a big play. Yes, that's a great time to take a shot. Ohio State loves taking shots in those situations when you get around midfield and you got some momentum. How is that the play design to take? You think JJ's going to be one-on-one when those are the weapons around him?
Ohio State just played a Big Ten championship game where its third best tight end played more than its starting slot receiver on offense. And I don't know if, and maybe some of that is trying to offset the fact that the offensive line wasn't getting the job done. But as you just pointed out, they were also drawing up plays for their second and third best tight end to get the ball over their starting slot receiver. And what's happened with Brandon Ennis this year is I think he is a very good football player. And he is open a lot. And he is consistently the recipient of, oh, Julian didn't see him. And because his numbers, and he's not as good as Carnell and JJ are, he's also not 6'4", 205, 220 pounds like those two are. But I think he is a very serviceable player. They just don't put the ball in his hands nearly as often because at best, he's third in line to get food. And given the way they've played offense this year, sometimes he's fifth behind Max Clare and Will Kazmarek when it comes to touches in terms of the receiving standpoint. In fact, Max Clare has more touches than him. Max Clare is like 4 catches behind Carnell Tate this year. And I get that. I think it's admirable that Keenan Bailey in the last 3 years here has turned the tight end room from a one-man band of Cade Stover to now you feel like you got 4 guys you can play every single week. Really 5 guys you feel like you can play every single week. But Gillis isn't here, and anybody who listens to this podcast knows at this point he's kind of over the Nate Roberts fullback experience. But I'm kind of over the heavy personnel experience because the return on investment on a week-to-week basis is not there. It worked against Michigan, but there have been too many weeks where we have watched it not work to still be. Do you really not? You trust your tight end room? We've reached the point where the tight end room is better than the wide receiver room, and I don't think that's the formula to win. I think that was the formula to get through the 12-game regular season where your schedule kind of blew up because teams weren't as good as you thought they were going to be and you were load managing and you could play a certain way. But like, I don't think that's the way you're going to win a national title. I don't think they're going to win a national title with 3 tight ends on the field and just Jay or just Carnell. I just don't think that's the way to do this. And for whatever reason, they have been adamant for 13 weeks that this is the way to win football games. When, to your point, no duh, they doubled JJ. He's the only threat on the field. Every single snap you take where Carnell and JJ are not both on the field significantly raises the chance that a defense wins the rep.
Guess which 2 receivers are on the field when Ohio State scored its red zone touchdown?
All 3 of them are on the field.
And that's the head scratching part because like you just did this red zone goal line thing without 7 tight ends on the field and it ended in a touchdown. Like you just saw it happen. And on the biggest play of the game, on 3rd and 1 where you have to get a yard, otherwise you know you're going to kick a field goal just to try to tie the game. Bennett Christian it's not just like that. He's the target. He's probably the best target on that play. I think Julius saying did the best that he could do on that play. Yeah. But you also you're doing the one thing Ryan Day talks about how you can't afford to be predictable, right? Like when CJ Donaldson's on the field, there has to be a threat that he's going to run it. He's not just pass blocking. And Bo Jackson's on the field, there has to be the threat that he's going to pass block. When they lined up, whether it was Michigan or there was this game against Indiana, we're sitting next to each other in a press box. When they line up with Jeremiah out wide and then a bunch of tight ends, what do we say? It's going to be a fade to JJ, which is a good play. I get it. But you know it's probably one of them. And D'Angelo Pons defended him terrifically because D'Angelo Pons knew exactly what he was going to try to run toward the corner. D'Angelo Pons was terrific against it. Or it's going to be a run, or it's going to be kind of that play action rollout with the tight ends. The play that should have been a touchdown against Michigan, that was a false start. But they're lining up on that 3rd and 1, and they snap the ball, and I'm thinking to myself, this is the play that was going to be the touchdown against Michigan. Everyone knew if it wasn't a run, that's what you were running. So how did Harding know to get all the way across to the other side of the field? Because they just watched the Michigan tape, and they saw that on a have-to-have-it situation, that's what you ran. Yeah. With Bennett Christian and Jelani Thurman. It was the same thing. And Bo Jackson's covered on that play as well. It worked against Michigan because you hadn't run it a ton, and Michigan is not as good of a defense as Indiana. And then you played a better defense after putting it on film. It was just like every time they lined up like that, you're scratching your head being like, okay, it's going to be one of 3 things here. And it's like, I don't know, man. It's if you're a fan, I understand why that's maddening to watch because Brian Haynes is one of, arguably the best defensive coordinator in the country. if Stefan Krajisnik in the press box could see it, I guarantee you that Haynes has watched plenty of film to know what's coming. So you scored a touchdown in the red zone with your receivers on the field.
And I get it. Like Carnell might not be all the way. So he only played 41 snaps in comparison to JJ played
41 snaps out of what? 50 something? That's that's still a pretty healthy workload.
Yeah, he got a healthy dose of snaps. But even if you were trying to maintain it, I think I noticed it and pointed out to you, it's not the fact that they're taking Carnell off the field. It's either you play Carnell and JJ or you go JJ and a bunch of tight ends. Like, why can Brandon Ennis not do those things? I'm just not under. If they, I hope they don't think that 13 personnel is how they're going to win a national title this year. I really hope that's not what they think is going to happen here, because the return on investment has not been. And you got to open it up, man. You got 2 dogs. And I think Brandon Ennis is better than the credit he gets sometimes, because he just doesn't get the ball as much as those guys get the ball.
You think if Quincy Porter's healthy, it's different at all?
No, because I have no reason to think that. I think he had a really good spring, lost his black stripe early, and then we just didn't hear from him again. So sure, if we're just going to go off to the fact that he's a 5-star receiver, then yeah, maybe. But I mean
he's had more moments this year than Miley Graham has had.
And that ain't great, because Quincy Porter, we haven't seen him play in a football game in like a month and a half. So maybe, I guess. But again, it's
that's just the part about it that's like, I don't know, man. Gus Johnson's on a broadcast being like Charlie B from Nashville, Tennessee 700 times, and it's like, so you're telling me that one of the all Big Ten receivers on Indiana's roster went down and they were just fine going 3 wide and running their offense. And Ohio State, has the 2 best receivers in the country, and both of them are a little banged up, and they're struggling to put 3 wide receivers on the field. It's head scratching, man. It was genuinely maybe the most surprising part of this. Had you told me in June, Indiana Ohio State Big Ten championship game, I would have been like, yeah, sure. Kurt Cignetti's got it rolling. He gets them to Indy because they don't have to play Ohio State in the regular season. If you told me they're going to get there and the team that has the deeper receiver room and plays 3 wide receivers on the field way more than the other team, and it's Indiana, I wouldn't believe you, man. It's crazy.
Elijah Sherrod had 3 catches for 37 yards and a touchdown. Well, he had 150. The dude who had 120 was Charlie Becker.
Yeah,
that was the dude who had the explosive plays. Very quickly here, Brian Hartline, as we're recording this, is down in South Florida getting his program started. He had his introductory press conference on Monday afternoon. And as Ryan Day said, he'll be down there early this week and then maybe back up here this week. And it'll just be like a healthy back and forth. Depending on where he's at, that's where his attention is. When he's down in South Florida, he's a Bull. When he's in Columbus, he's a Buckeye. And that's just what it's going to be. And listen, this happens. This is not the first time Ryan Day has gone through this. Jeff Hafley was in a similar situation in 19, where they're preparing to play Clemson in a bowl game. And Jeff Hafley is also trying to, get his program off the ground at Boston College. This is not new, and it's not unique to Ohio State or Ryan Day. This is because college football is stupid. Any concerns that Brian Hartline and him heading back and forth, it becomes a distraction.
It shouldn't become a distraction to Ohio State. I'm worried that it becomes a distraction for Brian Hartline. And if they continue to let him call plays, then that's worrisome, right? And then that's how it becomes a distraction for Ohio State. I said on the pod yesterday with Andrew. Andrew and I both believe that Hartline will still call plays. Mm-hmm. I listened to Ryan Day's press conference again after we recorded, and I'm starting to think maybe that's not the case. I'm very open to it. It sounds very much like they're going to try this out, but I think the leash might be pretty short on if they want to keep going with it. Right. Like, and it's hard to do that, right? To a loyal guy, to, guy that's Ohio State through and through. He's your top assistant. He's helped you done this, but like you got him to where he wants to go next. You got him a head coaching job, right? Like if you stripped him of play calling duties and then, he's still trying to find a head coaching job, like that's not a great look for him next year, right? If someone's trying to hire him and it's, hey, when he got play calling duties, they ended up getting taken away. That's not the case anymore, right? Like he's got the job lined up. I think for Ryan Day, you got to figure out what's best for you. And if you do feel like the USF situation is a bit of a distraction for Brian Hartline, then I think you got to pull play calling duties. I thought it was interesting that Ryan Day said that the offensive game planning starts kind of now, and then when Hartline comes back, he'll become part of that. Like I understand, right? You're not just gonna sit on your ass all week and not game plan at all if you're Ryan Day and this staff. But it's kind of odd that he's just gonna come back and it's gonna be like, okay, here's the idea. Now you be the one to call plays for it. It's kind of weird to me. So I'm a concern that it becomes a distraction for Hartline, and therefore becomes a distraction for Ohio State.
Yeah, I think Ryan Day is calling plays during the playoff.
I don't think it was though against Indiana. Because there was a few times like late in the second half where they show him on the sideline and like he's not looking at the play sheet or anything like that. So I know that there was kind of speculated, and it looked like at moments, he had the play sheet. It looked like he was pretty involved. I genuinely believe him that he was not calling the plays against Indiana.
Yeah. Now, was Ryan Day maybe a little bit more active on the channel? Then yeah, probably. But I think Brian Hartline was still calling the plays. I think it's been interesting to watch. And listen, the online is not a real place all the time, but it's just, I said this during the off season, and there was a lot of pushback from people of like this idea of the offense is just too good to fail. And if Brian Hartline's not good, Ryan Day will just take it back. And it's like, okay, but listen, just because you're good at recruiting and good at developing doesn't mean you're going to be good at scheming. And we watched it with Kerry Combs, who ironically and hilariously is coaching at Michigan now, which is just like, there are too many people over the last 5 or 6 years here who are like switching sides in the rivalry, whether it's Al Washington and Greg Madison in 2019, or it's Tony Alford in 2024. Now you got Kerry Combs in 2020. Like, what are we doing? This is weird. Stop switching sides in the rivalry. I get it. This is a profession. It's a job. It's still weird. Stop doing that. Both people. Stop changing sides. Stay on that side or stay on this side. Whatever side you're on, stay there. But I watched it with Kerry Combs. When Ryan Day hired Kerry Combs as his defensive coordinator, it was celebrated widely because of what he had done as a position coach here. He wasn't so beloved when he left here. And Ryan Day, 12 months ago, it was like, you can't lose Brian Hartline. He's too important. He's too invaluable. You can't lose him. Please do whatever it takes. Blank check. And now it's like, hey, we're having conversations about whether or not Brian Hartline should still be around. Or would they be better off just clean cut and go worry about your program down there? And that sucks that's the program. Because again, we had a texter ask this of Brian Hartline, maybe is he just kind of checked out? And it's like, nah, man, this is a dude he's from Canton, Ohio. He played football here. And up until 4 days ago, it's literally the only place he's ever known from a college football aspect. Like, he cared. Like, we saw him. We saw him in Billy Fester leave. That dude looked like he'd been crying. So I promise you he cares. He called a bad game. Terrible game plan. He was a coordinator this year. He looked like a first year coordinator. He's just doing it at a program who's got bright lights on the stage and so on. But he didn't check out. And so do I think Brian Hartline is going to put his best foot forward in making sure that he is doing all he can to put Ohio State in the best possible position to repeat as national champions? Yes. Do I also think he is doing everything he can to make sure that his first year at South Florida is considered a success? Yes. Do I think both of those things require a lot of time and energy and attention? Yes. And as long as Brian Hartline and Ryan Day acknowledge that, I think this will be fine. If it feels like they're like, no, everything's good, everything's working out, it's like Brian Hartline was down in Tampa 6 hours ago, and now he's sitting in an offensive staff meeting when he's also trying to think about who they're going to attack in the portal. But also he's got to worry about what play they're going to run on 3rd and 6 from the 27-yard line. I don't know if those two things mesh. So as long as they're completely raw and honest about how things are going, I think things will be fine. The moment that stops being the case, this is going to be a disaster.
Are you a little bit concerned about me going to Florida this week and coming back to podcast with you next week?
I am. I feel like you're trying to juggle too many things. Just don't take a job. You can go down there. Just don't take it. Don't call me on Wednesday like, hey, I got
by
a
the
job.
way, and also the 5-star that I was going to bring to cleveland.com, we got to beg him to stay now.
But also, I'm not going to be there. Don't do that. Fielding stuff. This is going to be a long podcast.
Yeah. Good thing we didn't make Brennan hop on for this one.
Yeah. We're actually giving Brennan the week off to just like celebrate. I think his semester is over, and we're just giving him a chance to go be a college kid for a little bit this week. Should Ryan Day ever trust Jaden Fielding ever?
Why don't you start out with what you sent to our texters? I think it's important context that I don't want to reiterate if you're the one who did the research.
So Jaden Fielding is 45 for 56 in his career. 84.2%, which isn't bad as a college kicker, right? I think you would classify that as pretty consistent. You're not perfect. You miss a couple, but for the most part, you make your field goals. And his career long is 49, which happened against Purdue a couple of weeks ago. He's also averaging 4 misses a year, and he's 16 of 19 for right now. So, like when I say averaging, I mean he's legitimately had 4 misses every single year as a starter so far. So if, history tells us anything, he's gonna have another miss this year. The problem isn't him missing field goals. It's missing field goals where it's like you have to have it. And so I went back and just tried to find as many field goals where it's like, you need to make this field goal or we're going to lose the football game. This first one, not as much, but it was still, the game was a little bit in the balance, especially since Ohio State ended up winning at 20-12. But it's 2023 against Penn State. He misses a 45-yarder after a 4-play drive that would have given OSU a 23-6 lead, which would have, the game is over from that point on. Instead, he misses the field goal. Penn State has a little bit of life left, but it's also James Franklin and Drew Aller, so that is what it is. This is where it starts to really pick up, though. In 2023 against Michigan, Ryan Day gets down to the 34-yard line, runs off the rest of the clock with the intention of having Jaden Fielding, who, again, had never made a 50-yard field goal before. In fact, Ohio State's kickers had not made a 50-yarder since 2019 at Northwestern. But he ran the clock all the way down to call a timeout and have Jaden Fielding kick a 52-yarder in Ann Arbor, and he misses it. So instead of Ohio State being down 14-13 at halftime, they're down 14-10 in a game that they eventually lost. Missouri in 2023, that's indoors at the Cotton Bowl where Ohio State's going to play at the end of this month. He misses a 48-yarder after a 4-play drive where Ohio State's already down to its third-string quarterback because the starting quarterback is in the portal and Devin Brown gets hurt. Ohio State's up 3-0. They would have gone up 6-0, and they end up losing that game 14-3. In that game, he missed that field goal in the third quarter. So it's like, we don't have our quarterback. We don't have our star receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. Every point matters, and that's something we can't keep asking our defense to get stops because eventually they're going to crumble, because that's what you can only ask your defense to hold for so long. Nebraska 2024, he misses a 42-yarder after a 7-yard play. Ohio State's already up 14-3, so maybe they wouldn't have lost this game, but they only won this game 21-17, right? So that's a different situation if he makes that field goal, and now Ohio State wins it 24-17. It puts a lot more pressure on how Nebraska has to call plays on that last drive. And then Michigan, and that's the most famed one of the group, he misses a 38-yarder after a 9-play drive in the second quarter, so Michigan stays up 7-3 instead of 7-6. And then later in that game, in the third quarter, it's 10-10. Caleb Downs gets an interception. Ohio State gets nothing on 3 straight plays and then kicks a 34-yarder, and Jaden Fielding misses the field goal. Game stays tied at 10-10, and Michigan goes on to win that game 13-10. And then obviously Ohio State on Saturday, 8-minute drive. Literally, it's not 20 plays like it was against Michigan, but the concept of it
felt like it.
The concept of what they were doing was the same of, we're going to run a lot of clock off of this and put this in a situation. We're either going to go up 17-13, and there's going to be one last possession in this game for Indiana to respond, or it's going to be tie game and Indiana's got one last possession to respond. And he misses a 26-yard field goal, and that's game. So that's a wide variety of games that are indoors. Those are games that are outdoors. And I get it. The Notre Dame kick is what anybody is going to say first of, hey, he sealed that game there. But if he misses that kick, Notre Dame's still down by 8 points in a game where their quarterback, Riley Leonard, had already shown he can't make the throws. So regardless of what he make or miss, they were going to have to score a touchdown and convert a 2-point conversion. And I don't know, do you think Notre Dame would have pulled that off last year?
Not on that defense, probably.
Right.
They had some momentum, but it would have been a tough ask.
Right. It's a tough ask regardless. Notre Dame's already in a situation where they have to score touchdowns. Kudos to making that field goal. But there are plenty of times during his 3 years as a starter where, again, he's 84% for his career here. So he is consistent. But we're not asking for the one in the middle of the second quarter when it's, the game's still going on. These are we need this, dude. You need to make this. And the way we're talking about how Indiana and their offense at the end of the day made the plays when you absolutely needed to make them and Ohio State didn't, this is part of that. When Ryan Day has called on his kicker in these moments, and I don't want to turn this into a bashing Jaden Fielding situation. He's still a human being. Please stay out of his DMs. Please stay out of his mentions with negative things. This is about football, and this is about how Ryan Day should approach the college football playoff, where if it's 4th and 1 and that same scenario pops up against Miami or Texas A&M or Tulane or Ole Miss or Georgia or anybody else, should Ryan Day have the faith that Jaden Fielding is going to make a kick, or should he make an adjustment and do something else in that situation?
I think it's you got to make some kind of an adjustment. I thought it was kind of surprising that even on 3rd and 1, they kind of ran that play to Bennett Christian, because with Jaden Fielding, I feel like you got to play 4-down territory. Run it on 3rd and 1. Yeah. If you don't get it, you're going for it on 4th down, right? And I would take that approach a lot going forward, where if it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, know that you're playing in 4-down territory. You can get the ball to Bo Jackson and set up 4th and 2 or something like that. And I think it does change up maybe how you call plays and things of that nature. But yeah, I don't think you can trust them. Not when you know what the rest of these games are going to be down the road, right? Like, remember in the Rose Bowl against Oregon where he kind of kicked that field goal in the second quarter, and I was like, all right, like, put him out there, see how he responds. And everyone was like, look, he responded. They were also up like 31-0 before Oregon blinked. Like I think it was 28-0 and he kicked the field goal. Like, that was as inconsequential as a field goal can get, outside of like, let's see where his mentals are. And that's fine. Like, he made it from that perspective. But in the biggest situations, like he's told you, like, his miss against Tennessee in the playoff, where it's like freezing cold and they're asking him to make like a 50-something yarder for a guy who doesn't really have much of a strong leg in general, let alone in those conditions, I don't blame him. These misses you just rattled off, 42, 38, 34, and then what was it, 28 on Saturday?
26.
Like these are chip shots. Like, Ryan Day called it a chip shot post game. Like, even the 48-yarder against Missouri in 2023. Kickers these days, like 48 yards is kind of a chip shot. So, like, no, I don't trust that. And you're right. Like, we know what happened after the Michigan game. Like, do not force this kid to have a security guard taking him to class or something like that. Like, let's not get ridiculous here. But we're talking about Ryan Day and determining whether he's going to bench a kicker or trust a kicker. Yeah. That's what we're talking about here. Yeah, I don't think you can. And it's also not a good look that video is like surfacing of him on the sideline, like chatting it up with Indiana fans while Ohio State's up 10-6, and like, it's not a good look, man. Like, it's not a good look. I wouldn't trust him. Not in the big moments. I would probably say you're playing now in 4-down territory. You're keeping your offense on the field. I would imagine the fact that they keep going back to fielding tells you that the Ball State transfer, Jackson Curville, who everyone is kind of clamoring for because he has, a game winner in his background. It's like 50-yarder or something like that. Cool. It's a little concerning to me that he hasn't won the job. I don't think Ryan Day is like loyal to no end to Jaden Fielding. So It does concern me a little bit that, the Ball State transfer hasn't necessarily grasped the job either. So I think you're playing 4-down territory. If something happens in the next 3 weeks where the Ball State transfer is balling out in practice and you trust him a bit more, then that would maybe be my second option. Jaden Fielding would be my third option in terms of what to do in those situations.
It's the Tegra situation, right? You're walking away from practices still thinking this is the guy for the job. So, okay, sure. Should they spend the next 4 weeks making Jackson and Jaden battle for the job? Yeah, I mean, we can say that, but they've also spent the last 12 months battling for the job.
Nothing suggests that Jackson's going to win that battle.
Right. So, like, I don't know. Is Jackson Corvell going to turn into Mike Nugent tomorrow? Then, like, sure. Then, okay, whatever. This isn't about, do I think Jaden Fielding can make a kick in the second quarter or a first quarter drive? This is about situations, which Ryan Day has said this a bunch of times. When you got shorter clock rules, the way the game has changed, the way the rules have changed in college football, it puts a lot more emphasis on specific situations. Okay, if the situation is, hey, kicker, we need you to make this or we are going to lose the football game. Whether it's literal game-winning field goals, whether it's what it was on Saturday or the Michigan game where it's stacked up on each other. I don't know why, but when the pressure is on, the performance is not there. So at some point as a coaching staff, you have to make the adjustment and understand that, yeah, can he make the chip shot in the second quarter? That puts you up 17-3 probably. If Ohio State gets stalled in the red zone on its first drive in the Cotton Bowl and they need Jaden Fielding to come make a field goal with it when there's 12 minutes on the clock in the first quarter and puts them up 3-0. Yeah, I think he can make that. But that's not the plays you talk about 20 years from now, right? You don't talk about the routine throw that CJ Stroud had to Jackson Smith-Njigba randomly against Tulsa. No, talk about the slot fade he had in the Rose Bowl. JJ had a lot of awesome catches last year. You don't know what the biggest catch of his career is so far? A 3rd and 11. Because it's a situation where you need JJ to do his job and you need Will Howard to do his job, and they did their job. And when those situations have arisen for Jaden Fielding, the last 3, we need you to do your job or we lose situations. Your kicker on field goals that were all less than 40 yards has shown you it might not be between the ears in those moments. So don't take Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate off the field anymore. I said it facetiously a month ago, and like you and Bill Ennis were, Because it was crazy. It was a very hyperbole thing to say. I understand that, but the point was I was getting my point across. Of I trust Julian Sand completing a 50-yard pass to Jeremiah Smith more than I trust Jaden Fielding to make a 50-yard field goal right now. I trust Julian Sand to complete a 40-yard pass to Jeremiah Smith or Carnell Tate more than I do Jaden Fielding making a 40-yard field goal right now. And the irony that the last play of the game was a Hail Mary that JJ caught over 7 people for 46 yards. That's just me getting the chance to talk trash. But like this is what I'm talking about. If there is an option of whether it's run pass, whether it's kick a field goal or go for it on 4th down territory, if the option comes down to should we choose JJ and Carnell or this guy, do the former.
Yeah.
Because you're right. D'Angelo Pons won the rep on that goal line fade against Jeremiah Smith. How many more reps did he win?
Maybe like one other.
Right. Because it's not because D'Angelo Pons is the back corner. It's because this is the best player in college football.
Right.
So there is always a limited amount of reps anybody's going to win against him. If you throw that ball 10 times, JJ's coming down with it 8 times out of 10.
Yeah. I think what's pretty telling, too, is you could tell the faith in Jaden Fielding has been slipping kind of anyways, right? Last year when it was 14-14 in the Cotton Bowl and Ohio State would have been like a 52-yarder and it's a tie game in the 4th quarter, on 4th and 2, they kept the offense on the field, right? So he had already lost faith in terms of, anything past like 45 yards for them to even attempt in a dome. And now you're adding on top of that you're going to miss a 26-yarder like that. I thought Ryan Day's reaction was so simple yet telling of what he was thinking in that moment when the camera pans to him and you just see Ryan Day go, he missed it. Yep. It was one of those things where Ryan Day was like, it almost kind of felt like Ryan Day be like, of course he missed it. Like it was kind of one of those things. So yeah, you can't, man. You just can't. Not in those moments.
Data point. And it's like it's a damning data point.
And it's got to be kind of scary too, because you're right. That is a pressure packed kick. It's also not like a season on the line kick. So what happens when the pressure is even higher?
Like what happens if it's 4th and 1 and it's a 26-yard field goal in the national championship game?
Right.
And so that's, again, this is not about Jaden Fielding. It's using him to have a conversation about the decisions the coaching staff makes in these important situations that, as the coaching staff has vocalized, are that much more important because you're getting less possessions.
And also, Day's explanation for kicking the field goal there was make that, get the ball back, drive, get a game-winning field goal. If your game plan is 2 field goals from Jaden Fielding, that can't be it. I would rather go for it there. You don't get it. You trust your defense to get off the field.
Because you know what?
You got
and I get it.
In your pocket.
Like there are some times I think in sports where us in the media, they're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't. Because right, if they'd have gone for it and it's like, oh, they didn't get it. It's like, well, why didn't you just take the points? Right? We do that sometimes. Yeah. I'm not there at all with this. Why did you? No. Go for the win or go home. Like Dan Campbell for the Detroit Lions has made a living off of win or go home. And I think they've all just gotten used to that's how he's going to do things. Is if there's a chance for me to be aggressive, I'm going to be aggressive. And it's like galvanized his team. And part of the reason why they've had some of the seasons they've had the last couple of years. Can he tweak it some? Sure. But I'd rather you be extreme in the way that you know is going to work more often than not. And then you can always slow down. It's harder to speed up.
Also recruit the position better. It's been too long for Ohio State like this to be so good at every position. I like you said, social media is a loud but like not real place. There's some people who are very adamant about what Ohio State's had at kicker recent years, and they're not particularly wrong.
I mean, the last time they played Georgia in a semifinal, it came down to a field goal that we all knew Noah Ruggles wasn't going to make. And this is Ohio State. You should never be snapping the ball, and everybody already know it's not going to work. Final break, and then we'll wrap with Julian Sand here on Buckeye Talk.
This episode is brought to you by McAfee.
Yes! Playoff tickets! Just need to click here and... Wait, what? Fake site? Good thing McAfee threw the red flag. That would have been $400 gone.
McAfee blocks risky sites so you don't pay for seats and other things that don't exist. Plans start at just $39.99 for your first year. That's cheaper than parking on game day. Learn more at McAfee.com/online protection.
Popeye's Scary Good new Freddy Fazbear Box has garlic palm tenders and cheesy bites with marinara sauce. Try it before it's too late. And see Five Nights at Freddy's 2, only in theaters. Love that chicken from Popeyes. Limited time at participating U.S. restaurants.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means and Stefan Krajisnik. This is your Leave No Doubt Monday pod coming to you on a Tuesday because Monday we talked about our reactions to the college football playoff. Julian Sand, 21 of 29 for 258 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Ironically enough, he still managed to be over 70%. But because he was below average, his completion percentage dropped down to 78.4. This is ridiculous, man. What are we doing? 72% is such a good game, but when you're completing almost 80% of your passes, we're like, shame on you, Julian. What was your grade at post game?
C-.
Have we been able to do it? We were having technical difficulties, so we didn't get videos and stuff up. But what would have been your grade?
C.
Okay. Did it change?
Yeah, probably like C+, B- range.
Okay. I was at a D after the game. I'm at like a B-. I think the refs screwed him on the spun out sack, like we talked about earlier. I think he's more mobile than we give him credit for sometimes. He's just not a good scrambler, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it feels a little more chaotic when it's happening.
Yeah, like there's no, it loses purpose, because even when he'll like run and try to, sometimes quarterbacks will scramble, get upfield, and they'll get like the 1 or 2 yards off of it. He runs out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage too often. And that's not just about Saturday. That's been throughout the year. And again, when your arm is that way and you've been sitting in the pocket all season, then it's fine. But he's quality mobile. It's just there's no purpose to his mobility, and it can sometimes be a little bit weird.
Yeah, I will say the QB draw Indiana ran early on like 3rd and 2 or whatever. I wouldn't mind throw a couple of those in the playbook.
Yeah,
it's gonna be there for Julie. If it's 3rd and 2 against Texas A&M, I'll tell you what Texas A&M is not expecting.
No.
That. And if you're having short yardage issues, I don't know, toss it in the playbook, see what happens.
The problem with Indiana is they got a little too greedy and tried to run it again. It's
and it went very poorly. No, you do it once. You do it once. Because it was funny. I'm sitting between you and Jimmy in the press box, and they run the QB draw the first time with Mendoza, and both of you at the same time were like, that's an awesome play call. Like, that's the perfect time to call it. And then they ran it again. All three of us were like, why did you call that there?
That's a one-shot shooter right there, man. You don't do that more than once.
Not with those linebackers on the other side.
Best thing he did, worst thing he did for you. Because mine was the thing they screwed him out of, and the fact that he's so mobile, but also like be better at being mobile.
Worst thing I think I thought was just in the first half, and his defense is not entirely his fault, but it felt like he was feeling pressure when there wasn't pressure yet. Right,
Mm-hmm.
or at least there was, or wasn't pressure in general. So that was probably the worst thing he did. Best thing he did, I thought they really did start to find a groove on offense in the second half, and I thought a lot of it was him kind of rolling out, getting a little momentum, getting a little feel, and hitting those easy passes ironically enough to the tight ends. I don't mind when they throw to Will Kessmerek and Max Clare,
no,
especially when they're not the primary target on the play. I don't want it to seem like I don't want any tight ends on the field, but like. There was a great play to Max Clare, a great play to Will Kessmerek, where they were able. It felt like he was the reason the offense started finding a bit of a groove, commanding the huddle, feeling where the pressure's coming from, where he had to shift to, where he had to move. It just felt like he started getting a feel for the game, and Ohio State's offense started to get some momentum. There, kind of in the second half. So that's why I originally gave him a C- because it felt like it was very bad in the first half. Pretty good in the second half. C- C is like a very average grade. I think there is value to, if you struggle in the first half, but you're awesome in the second half, I'll boost your grade a bit. Because that's when it matters, right? As opposed to the inverse. Like, if you're awesome in the first half, but you suck in the second half, I'm going to dock you strong because you probably lost the game for your team. So I give him a bit more credit. I thought he had a good feel for the game in the second half and had some momentum. And then, when it was poor, I just didn't think the people around him helped, whether that's play calling, whether that's offensive line. It wasn't ideal for him. You can dock him for the QB sneak. That's fine. He had a pretty, poor feel of where the bubble was on that play. But other than that, I thought the second half he actually looked pretty good and kind of looked like the Julian saying that we've known to this.
I thought Julian and Fernando both came out ready to duel in the second half.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, we just spent 20 minutes getting our butts whipped, and I feel like I'm starting to figure out what this defense is throwing at me. Let's go do this thing. Fernando's team helped him. Julian Sand's team did not help him, which leads us into our final thing. A college football playoff defensive coordinator learned this about Ohio State's quarterback thanks to Indiana.
If you can get some pressure on him, you can make life a little bit more difficult. And that seems very obvious, but that's not a ton of teams have been able to do that this year. And he's still a young quarterback. If you can disguise things and get pressure on him, then it might take some time to, click. And I think the scary part is that was well, right now, you can't dispute it now. That's the best team in the country, number one undefeated in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to make life really difficult for Julian Sand, and at the end of the day, they only won that game by 3 points. Right, so that's a scary thought where a team like A&M or a team like Texas Tech could maybe make life difficult for Julian Sand. It might not mean that they win that game, right, because they're not as good as Indiana. But I thought Julian Sand showed, especially in the first half, if you can throw some things his way that he hasn't seen a ton of this season, it can become a bit difficult, especially with that offensive line in front of him. Not to say that he's not ready for these moments, but they're not entirely moments he's been in yet, and there's a learning curve to that. I think he's going to come out in the playoff better because of it, because of what happened on Saturday.
I think if I'm Miami or Texas, whoever wins that game should come out and immediately the message should be, Julian, show me you learned from that. But also, is the offensive line ready to help Julian Sand? I have a lot of numbers. I'm not going to throw them all at people, but this is the second most pressures he's had in the game in terms of how often a team has pressured him. He was under pressure on 11 of his 34 dropbacks. The only game where he was pressured on more snaps was the Wisconsin game. They pressured him on 13. He also threw the ball 45 times.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, okay. That's just kind of what it was, right? The only other games he's been in double digits. Penn State pressured him on 10 of 24 dropbacks. Purdue pressured him on 10 of 37 dropbacks. So Penn State, who's got a good defensive line, and it didn't matter because they never got home. And then Purdue, who got home twice, but also he threw the ball 37 times, and he was without one of his best weapons. I think this one was so interesting, though, because this is the third highest percentage of pressurized dropbacks, 32.4%. Penn State was 41.7. Rutgers was 36.8. He was under pressure on 7 of 19. So, that's actually pretty good by Rutgers. They kind of got after him a little bit, given how much they threw it. Obviously, he got sacked 5 times. That's almost half as many as he has on the season came in this season. He's been sacked 11 times. 5 of them came in this game. And I think this is the first time that these pressures, he felt it because they got home. That's what I learned. Because when I was looking this up, I'm expecting this was 11 out of 34, 32%. That's going to be significantly higher than everywhere else. And it's no, Texas was 25%, Rutgers 36%, Wisconsin 28.9%, Washington 28.1% of his dropbacks. He was under pressure. He's the only game where he wasn't under pressure on a single snap was Grambling, because obviously, and then the only other game he was under 5 was last week against Michigan. They only pressured him on 4 of his 27. So he's just, he's living in this world of 5 to 9 a game that he's under pressure. But at no point this year has it felt like it's bothered him, because Ohio only got home once of the 8 pressures. Washington only got home once of the 9 pressures. Wisconsin only got home once on the 13 pressures. Purdue 2 of the 10 pressures. UCLA 1 of the 8 pressures, which is why I think we put such an emphasis on, pressure is great. Can you get home? Because it's not the pressure that makes quarterbacks nervous, especially young quarterbacks. It's when you start getting home, and now they're seeing ghosts because they've been hit a couple of times. And Julian got hit. A lot of those sacks came in the first half. So when Joe Klatt's talking about, Brandon Ennis is open, but he didn't see it because his pocket wasn't clean. Yes, it was. But when you've been hit 5 times already, are you trusting that your pocket is clean? Any small amount of, it's almost like you now see what can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So any level of pressure, it's oh shoot, I'm about to get sacked. I got to move up. No. If you'd have just stayed in there and been patient and looked, that's a 35-yard completion. But when your right side has been blowing up in your face for 2 quarters, for the first time this season, Julian Sand lost faith in his offensive line.
Specifically,
and so
the right
Texas,
side.
Specifically the right side.
Because that's where it looked like the pressure was going to come from, and it never did.
It never happened.
Yeah. If you've watched Ohio State enough this season, you watch that play and you say, I know exactly what was going through Julian Sand's mind.
Yeah. Because 4 plays earlier, he's running for his life and spitting out of a sack.
Yeah.
So, look, I get with young quarterbacks, if you can get them pressured and get them rattled early, then yes, it can help. But I'm not going to blame Julian Sand, because people who are much larger than him have got to him 4 straight times already and are working on a 5th. And now you're not as calm as you've been all season when your pocket has been clean.
Yeah. If you walked away from Saturday thinking Gunnar Stockton should be in New York more than Julian Sand should be in New York, you gotta rethink some things.
We recorded this Monday afternoon heading into the evening, so the Heisman Trophy finalists have not yet been revealed.
We're an hour away as we're recording.
Yeah, we're an hour away as we're recording. Maybe I'm not going to go full rant mode, because I don't want to go full rant mode. It's Stephen, chill. He's in New York. I hope Heisman voters didn't overthink this. Fernando Mendoza's winning the Heisman Trophy, and the top 3 finishers in the Heisman Trophy should be Julian Sand and Jeremiah Love. Anything other than that result is pure ludicrous, and we need to start rethinking how we vote for this stuff, because that's idiotic. We can't go into the weekend saying these 2 are playing for the Heisman Trophy And because one won by 3 points, all of a sudden the loser's not even in New York or not even a top 3 finisher. That's all I'll say. Because I don't want people.
We're planning on a pre-Heisman pod this week, and that could end up being a very much like, all right, awesome season for Julian. Here's why Fernando Mendoza should win it. It could go from that to like, what the hell are we doing? Why is Julian saying not in New York pod?
And I don't want that to happen.
I really don't want that to happen.
So again, I hope people are listening to this on Tuesday and going, Stefan, chill. He's going to New York. It's okay. You guys don't have to do that. That's all I got. You got anything else you want to bring up?
I just rewatching it. I thought it was a cool environment, man. Like the teams running out, all that. Again, just an awesome weekend for the Big Ten, and I really hope these teams meet again. I think there's probably going to be a chip on Ohio State's shoulder throughout the playoff, and of course, if they were to rematch Indiana. But I still think that these two defenses, oh man, like the rewatch, like watching in real time, I was like, these defenses are good enough for these teams to meet each other in a natty. Rewatching it, I just kept saying, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, and Bones Jones. Like those 3 guys kind of dominated this game, and I thought Arvell played well. I just thought the way they used him wasn't necessarily like, it's not that they used him in a poor way and that he didn't play well. Is that they use him in a way that it wasn't like as loud as we've seen Arvell at times, right? And you don't notice the things that he was doing well. But Bones Jones and Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs were all over the field in this game. And those 3 guys could play a big role into why these teams rematch. I'm very happy that they ended up on opposite sides of the bracket, because I think that's what the Big Ten deserves.
I think it's great. This is the second straight year where I feel like I left an Ohio State game against a Big Ten team where I'm like, those are the 2 best teams in the country. Yeah, Ohio State didn't play perfect, but those are the 2 best teams in the country. The Oregon game last year in Eugene, which is funny because that was a high-scoring game. Yeah. And so we were talking about what's up with the defense, but still, those were the 2 best teams in the country. And as long as they handle business, we'll see this again.
Did you see the bracket, what it would look like if it was last year's format? Ohio State would play James Madison and Tulane, and then have a potential rematch with Indiana in the semifinals. How funny would that be?
That would have been hilarious. Meanwhile, Indiana's like fighting for its life. But yeah, man, that was a great game. Those are the 2 best teams in the country. It just so happened to be a defensive stalemate. And if you're an Ohio State fan, maybe we get a repeat of last year, where the first time they were on the wrong end of it on a game that came down to 1 play. The next time around, it comes down to Ohio State winning the game, and maybe it's a one-sided victory, or maybe it's another good football game. But those are the 2 significantly best teams in the country. Ohio State's got some things to clean up. Indiana, I'm sure people who cover them are talking about how they got some things to clean up as well. We got about 4 weeks until Ohio State heads to Dallas, and they'll play the winner of either Texas A&M and Miami in the Cotton Bowl to start their college football playoff journey. Get the text 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. We're going to dive into the recruiting class this week, since we didn't get a chance to do it last week because, distractions and all that stuff. And then we'll start ramping up to get ready for the college football playoff to see if Ohio State can repeat as national champions. In the meantime, for Stefan Krajisnik, I'm Stephen Means. Talk to you guys later.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here, wishing you a very happy half-off holiday, because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the service. And Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means a half day, yeah? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.